Hello and welcome to another Simsig tutorial video, or really an introduction video, and this one is for the North London line simulation. Now it's worth noting this is one of the older simulations on Simsig, so it's configured for kind of a DOS style screen where you have a single application and 4 buttons. The view 1 to 4 in this case. You can also access them with the number pad, which is quite handy. And this simulates the North London line passenger services that run from Richmond on screen 1 right through to North Woolwich on screen 4, and also Gospel Oak, which is on screen 2. This line at the top, which comes across the top here, and then into the line that goes from Liverpool Street out towards Barking. So the District line and some freight trains all kind of come up the line here to Barking. So there's 2 separate passenger services. The 2 are not mixed together, so that line there, that NE, means it's not electrified, that top line. They're trying to electrify it now, I think, as of recording, but it still hasn't been done yet. So these are diesel trains that stop in the Bay platform here at Gospel Oak, go along all the way to Barking and back again, whereas the services from Richmond all the way through to North Woolwich are third rail DC multiple units, or at least until recently they were class 313s, which is the same as the ones on the Moorgate up to Hertford line. Now it's worth noting, if you're interested, that this track here has since been removed. So since the Olympics, the line here now stops at Stratford. There is a little reversing neck here, and that's about it. If you want to carry on to West Ham and Canning Town, you can get the Jubilee line underground from Stratford, which stops at West Ham and Canning Town. If you want to go to Custom House, Silvertown or North Woolwich, you have to instead get the Docklands light railway. So this simulation actually predates that. It's from kind of the 90s, really, the layout in the 90s, where most of the trains ran all the way from Richmond right through to North Woolwich and back. However, at busier times, some trains did stop at Stratford and reverse, but most of them would still come down to Richmond at this far end. So there's a couple of things that make this simulation a lot more complicated. The general passenger service is quite high frequency, so there's usually 3 trains an hour in each direction. I think there are 2 trains an hour from Gospel Oak to Barking, but on top of that you have lots and lots of freight using the North London line really as a link route between the different main lines. So if you look here, you've got old and new Q junction. So these are this is the line that goes down to Kensington Olympia and down towards Waterloo and Clapham Junction and that kind of thing. So trains from Willesden sometimes come down here. Notice it's not electrified, so on this simulation it's only freight that comes in and goes out here. We then have another junction here, Acton East, which goes to the Great Western Main Line just near Old Oak Common. So again, you've got freight coming up from here. You've then got a couple of other junctions, so a facing junction to Acton, so that goes to kind of northwest London direction. Again, freights, some of the freights just kind of maybe come in here and go out here, and vice versa, but sometimes they'll travel along the line here to another junction. Sometimes they go onto the line and go all the way along here. So you got kind of stuff going that way. In terms of the West Coast Main Line, so again you've got from Willesden Junction, so effectively if you're on the main line coming out of Euston and you get to Willesden, you can come up onto this, which used to be called the High Level. So that's Willesden High Level Station, and so you could come up from the main line up onto this junction and get onto the High Level in order to either go across to the Great Western Main Line or otherwise go here towards Kew and the southwest. When we come further in, this is Willesden Junction High Level Stations. That's the passenger station there. You have Mitre Bridge Junction, so that again goes down to Kensington Olympia and Clapham Junction. So the Clapham Junction to Willesden service runs up and down here. We then have another couple of transfer routes. So you notice here as well the electrification, which is we'll talk about in a minute, which is another complication. But you have this line here, which connects the high level down onto the Euston to Watford Junction DC lines. In fact, there are actually London Underground lines also as far as Harrow and Wealdstone. So there are actually four rail DC down here as well. And this is just a transfer siding, so sometimes empty stock will go up here to get onto depot, either at Wealdstone Junction Depot or sometimes up to Bletchley and further out into Bedfordshire to go onto depot. This line here is the line that joins, which one's this? Number 1 to the West Coast Main Line. So this will go to Harlesden Station, which is the next station up on the low level lines. And again, what will then happen is that will allow these trains to get into Wembley Depot, and then eventually, if they need to, onto the West Coast Main Line. And notice that again, these have all got AC overhead, so you've got kind of different types of trains. You've also got a reversing siding that's used quite often, particularly for the trains that come from Clapham Junction. They will all reverse in the reversing siding and come back out into Wealdstone that way. So there's kind of lots of stuff going on. Most of it's fairly simple, but the main thing in this simulation is to keep the freight trains out the way of the passenger trains as much as possible. Like with most of these simulations, real life means that sometimes you're going to get a few conflicts and you'll just have to decide what to do at that point. You can also set this part of the line, this first bit to here, to be auto working, and that's because this line here is London Underground, and from Gunnersbury down to Richmond the line's shared by the North London Line and London Underground. So instead of having to regulate the North London Line trains and the London Underground trains, you can just click that button and this whole section will work automatically. So that's kind of quite useful to do that. The automatic code insertion, I think, is for the reversing siding, so that when the trains reverse it will automatically change the code. I can't remember using that, but that should probably be what it is. I think they'll be the only codes that will change at this point on the simulation, will be in the reversing siding. If we come along, we then get to just the passenger stations here between Wealdstone and Gospel Oak. When we get to Gospel Oak, we have this junction, but all of these passenger trains go down because these lines are electrified down this way. The only trains that cross the junction this way will either be empty coach and stock movements in the morning and the evening, or freight trains will go up there. So if you've got a class 2 passenger train that's going to go downwards, you don't need to worry about it. You can set the signal, probably leave that on auto. Most trains will go downwards. You can probably save yourself a bit of hassle, but you do have to regulate entry and exit into the bay for the Gospel Oak to Barking trains as well. I'm not actually sure whether... Oh, you can. You can, if you set the line into the bay platform and auto the signal. No, you can't auto it for that route, so that's a bit annoying. Anyway, you've got to regulate the bay. The trains will come in here from Barking. Like I said, I think it's 2 an hour. They'll stop in here. There is room for more than one train in the bay. Usually, I think 2 you can fit in there. And then obviously they'll go out by going that way onto 3. I'm not sure why it's missing the repeater arrow here for that signal, so I'm not sure whether actually let me just unpause it just to check. So I've cancelled that. I'm not sure if that is... Yeah, so what you have to do is click the entry signal here and then go onto page 3 and click the output signal in order to get the train out of the bay. That's a bit rubbish, but that's obviously what you do. Let's pause it again. The passenger trains coming further around here will stop at Kentish Town. Then you get to Camden Road, another reasonably busy junction. So this is the line that connects to Camden Junction on the West Coast Main Line just north of Euston. So you get lots of freight trains coming up here. There might again also be empty coach in stock going around the junctions. You just got to be a little bit careful. And the other thing that you'll notice is there isn't much of an approach here, so you tend to get a notification very quickly before the train will reach that red signal. So again, you've just got to kind of keep an eye on that as you're going along. Then when you get immediately east of Camden Road, you have this what used to be a freight line at the top here. So that's only for freight trains, and it is electrified, so the freight trains tended to always be sent along that line. and the DC lines continue along the bottom for the passenger service. So notice when we come along a bit to Caledonian Road, the station isn't on the top lines, it's only on the bottom lines, so you must send your DC services along there. I guess in extreme circumstances, if that line was blocked, you might decide to send some trains around the top, bypassing those stations, but you'd have to get them to run through the stations and run to another timetable and stuff like that. It would be complicated, but you could do that. Down here we have the line that goes into King's Cross and the East Coast Main Line, so you have some freight trains. You also have some Eurostar services at this point in time that will come round the junction. I think what they do is, I think they come in through one of these lines here, possibly Old Q Junction. Well, that's not electrified. No, they must come up here or somewhere, and they come onto this line. Oh, they must come up the Mitre Bridge Junction, because they'll come from Waterloo. They'll come along here, here to Camden Town, and then they'll need to go off on that line down to King's Cross. Again, you'll have a few trains going down there, just another thing to pay attention to. As we come even further east, Caledonian Road, Highbury and Islington, you have this junction here, Canonbury West Junction, which goes up to Finsbury Park. Now, at the minute, the only use for that is empty coaching stock. So a lot of the 313s from here and some of the ones from Stratford further round will go in the morning and the evening. They'll go up here to get to Hornsey Depot for maintenance, and they'll also come back down. Notice that this junction only goes in one direction, so the trains can't go from here west towards Willesden, certainly not without reversing here, but I don't think you have to do that. I think all of these trains go towards Dalston Junction here. So again, in the mornings and evenings you're going to get a fair few trains. During the day, I think there might be a very occasional freight that goes on this line, but I don't think very much happens here during the day, if I remember. And then we get even further east to Dalston Junction, so this is where the freight lines merge again with the DC lines, but at this point the line is now AC powered, so we have overhead wires at Dalston. So the 313 units are dual powered. They usually put the pantograph up at Dalston Kingsland, which gives them a little bit more juice to go forwards to Stratford. Dalston Junction now is a lot bigger. This has all been changed now to be London Overground, and you've got lines that go down to South London and stuff like that. But during this era, none of that work had been done, so Dalston Junction is just a single or a double junction, but in a single place, which comes into Dalston Kingsland Station. You have again a few services to Reading Lane Junction. I think these are mostly empty stock in the morning and evening. This is from Liverpool Street and the line into Liverpool Street, so trains will come up here, come along here, along D and up into Finsbury Park and Hornsey Depot. So again, mostly in the morning. After that you can auto these signals for most of the time, but just pay attention for class 5 trains. And then we get the nasty junctions at Stratford. So from here, from Hackney Wick, all of the DC trains will go into 4E here. So this is where Stratford Low Level Station is, and then all of these other lines here are freight lines. So you look here, you can go into the Freightliner terminal from this signal. You can carry them around to 3G, which is basically the high level at Stratford, which is more freight stuff. Sorry, where were we? We're here. Freight through to the Liverpool Street lines basically. There's also a loop that can take stuff from Stratford High Level Station all the way around into the freight yard here. This is obviously a different signal box, but you know, if we click on that for instance, that's going to Camden Junction, so we need to signal that through to here. And then again another branch onto the Liverpool Street lines, Carpenters Road South. This is more empty coaching stock. I don't think there are many freights that come up here. Most of the freights are here and here, but again you'll see it when it appears, and you'll have to work out whether you're going round the loop or onto the North London line. So you can see there's a lot of stuff on here, and we're only on page 2. When it comes to page 3, this is a continuation of the diesel Gospel Oak to Barking line. So we saw Gospel Oak here, we saw the Bay platform. This line up here at 3F is this. So again, mostly a slow stopping passenger service. They're all stopping services, stop at all stations to Barking. But you again have all of these additional links because the North London line is so convenient. This links to the Midland line, so this links to the St Pancras to, you know, kind of Bedfordshire direction lines, and you'll get a lot of freight coming up and going out of Carlton Road Junction, so it's telling you that this one's approaching, and in this case it's going off here and coming back into Stratford. You then have this Haringey link, so it's the East Coast Main Line, so again you're going to have some trains going that way, and Seven Sisters is a slightly different line, but that also comes out from I think it's Liverpool Street, that one, but yes, that's a Liverpool Street line. So again, you've got freights coming out of Seven Sisters, probably to get round onto the Stratford freight loop. So again, you're going to have stuff coming in there and going out there as well, all very confusing. You then have the junction here where you send trains around to Stratford, but the interesting part is at the bottom, the services actually leave our control and then will arrive, if they're coming back into here, which most of them will be, they will arrive back in our simulation. Obviously this signal box here will automatically send them in the right direction, so we got no slot control, nothing funny here. We just signal it into this line, it will reappear here. And then we have Temple Mills Yard arrival and departure lines, in from the west, in from the east, and then again various sidings. You will use some of these, so you'll get light locos that will need to come into the loco lines. You might get diesels need to come into the diesel depot, so you just have to pay attention to whatever it is on here. This says Temple Mills Yard, so that train's going to come round here and it's going to come into Temple Mills Yard here with this arrow. So usual kind of stuff, nothing too complicated, just the volume of traffic and the number of different services, top to bottom, left to right, and everything else. So back to page 4, that H is the rest of the stations from the Gospel Oak Barking line. There aren't many freights at this point, most of them have left us here, but there will be an occasional freight train coming all the way around here to J. You have a bit more regulation to do here, so you've got the lines from Liverpool Street to Ilford, and you've got a branch of trains that are going to come off here, some freight trains as well, so you need to regulate this junction. I'm not sure, can't remember how many trains of each are coming this way. I think I left these off auto and just regulated as necessary. And then the Gospel Oak Barking trains will all go into the bay on platform 1 at Barking, and obviously they're going to need to come back out again onto this line and then get signalled back up onto the North London line. So that's all really busy. As I've already mentioned here, you sometimes reverse trains at Stratford, so keep an eye on that. In the old days, some of them did used to reverse back out of this platform and onto there. I can't remember if I think there might be 1 or 2 during the day where you have to do that across this crossover, but for the most part, most of them will reverse into this platform to form the next service. I don't remember ever having to use this crossover, so you can probably leave that alone. And again, you can select auto working for this end, because by the time you get to North Woolwich, you've only got a single track. That's one track working. So by setting that to auto, the train will automatically be signalled into there, and when it comes out, it will automatically be sent out the crossover in the correct direction. So you might as well leave that. So it is quite a fun, albeit busy simulation. Oh, not that one. You see that the slowest speed is also normal, so if you start at midnight, it's kind of not too bad. As you kind of use it a little bit, obviously as you get to the morning, you'll start getting empty coaching stock moving into position, ready for the services, and then you'll basically have a day pretty much till about 10 or 11 p.m. of constant passenger traffic and constant freight trains that run all through the night and all through the day. So certainly a very busy panel, but it is doable by yourself. It does help if you're familiar with the area. So if you know that Richmond is over here, if you know that Stratford's over here, those kinds of things, then you'll be able to work your way around it much easier. Otherwise, you'll find yourself doing this all the time, darting between all the screens, making sure that the services are moving. One of the things that is useful about the North London line is the line speed is no more than 60, I think, at any point on this simulation. So you haven't got high-speed trains, which tends to mean you've got time to dart between services and to kind of set the route a couple of signals at a time, and then kind of what we're doing here, what we're doing here, what we're doing here, and all the rest of it. So that makes it more doable. Also, all of the services are stopping on both the diesel lines up the top and also on the DC lines down the bottom. They're all stopping services. So again, the passenger trains don't tend to move too quickly, but like I say, as long as you concentrate, as long as you're darting between all the pages, I would suggest leaving that on auto on page 1 and leaving that on auto on page 4. That just help you out a little bit. And again, the automatic code insertion I think works for platform 1 at Barking, just so you don't have to change head codes. Other than that, hopefully you'll enjoy the simulation. It's donationware at the minute, so you can download this for free and make a donation. They suggest £5, which isn't very much money, to be honest, and again that will go into supporting the work of Simsig, being able to update some of these older simulations and making them use scrolling windows, which means then you can run them across multiple monitors and then you don't have to switch between the screens. So the scrolling is quite good, and Jeff and others are going to be able to do that if we support them with donations. So any questions or comments, as always, please leave them below. Any requests for other simulations, please let me know. I've got several others, and I can always look through some of them for you.